Thanks, brother. Raise it some more so everybody can see. All right, I want to tell you right now that if you're on the wings, you might like chicken wings, but I'm going to tell you right now, if you're on the wings, you have no possibility of seeing this. All right, so I'm going to say to you that if you want to move now, you can, but you don't have to. Susie, you and Ed cannot see. Ken, you cannot see. Roy, y'all cannot see, but you don't have to move. I'm just saying to you that you won't be able to see. And you guys over here are not going to be able to see either, except maybe here. But I cannot function without a PowerPoint hardly. Matter of fact, got married 48 years ago. I'm not sure how I proposed without one. But it must have happened because my wife is right over here. So let's raise it and maximize all the screen that we can. And let's see here. All right. That's pretty good. Now let's focus. Yeah. Thank you. It's nothing I'm OCD. It's nothing I'm OCD. It's nothing I'm OCD. Well, good evening. I was pretty sorry. Good evening. Good. That's great. I'm so glad to be here. So I'm an old war horse, am I, Carrie? You want to count hairs on the top of your head and hairs on top of my head? Let's just see how that goes, brother. I do love you, and I'm. Is that well known? Okay, so you got a that's by the way. Okay, all right, good. Good. You got your first grandchild coming, and that's great. And Lord, I hope you have a safe trip back tonight and all that. And glad to be here at Red River. We love it here. And when I first, okay. This ain't Red River, but I was going to tell you a joke from Red River. All right, here's my Red River joke that I'm telling at Tahoe. Are you ready? Okay, so these two guys were painting a house. All right, and they were painting one side of the house, and they were running out of paint when they finished the first side, so they said, we're going to have to thin this down. So they thinned it down, and then they painted the second side. And then they were still running out of paint, so they thinned it down some more, and they would have painted the third side. And then they thinned it down some more, and they painted the fourth side. And so they said, man, we finally got to finish. Everything is good. And then the rain came. The rain came and washed off the paint of 3 of those walls. And they fell down to their knees and they said, God, what is it that you want us to do? We'll do anything. And the voice from heaven says, repaint and thin no more. Okay. So I did tell that at Red River, but this is Tahoe and I love it. Okay, so let's go as we talk about this. When I first saw this topic, I was not excited about it, Carrie, because we've not had a good year about praying stuff and it not coming true, or at least from our appearances. And so this was not my favorite topic when I saw it. Maybe that was the reason I got it. I'm not real sure, but I just want you to know when we talk about the promise of answered prayer, this is a tough time to be talking about. And I'm going to be using some of one of our dear faculty members by the name of Stan Mitchell. Dr. Stan Mitchell died at age 62 suddenly last February. And then it wasn't too long after that I gave a chapel speech, so some of this is about that, but most of it is new. For instance, Garth Brooks. I'm wearing this so that I can do my imitation of Garth Brooks. Okay, so there's Garth Brooks. Just the other night at a hometown football game, my wife and I ran into my old high school flame. And as I introduced them, the past came back to me, and I couldn't help but think of the way things used to be. She was the one that I wanted for all times. And each night I'd spend praying that God would make her mine. And if He'd grant me this one wish, I wish back then I would never ask for anything again. She wasn't quite the angel that I remembered in my dreams, and that's after he saw her later on. And I can tell that time has changed me in her eyes too, it seemed. We tried to talk about the old days. There wasn't much we could recall. I guess the Lord knows what He's doing after all. And as she walked away and I looked at my wife, and then and there I thanked the good Lord for the gifts in my life. Sometimes I thank God for unanswered prayers. Remember when you're talking to the man upstairs that just because he may not answer doesn't mean he don't care. That's not good English, but you know. Okay, some of God's greatest gifts are unanswered. Some of God's greatest gifts are all too often unanswered. Some of God's greatest gifts are unanswered prayers. Now, I want to get you to thinking about this because actually Garth Brooks is wrong about that. And the reason why he's wrong about that is that it might appear to him that they were unanswered prayers, but that doesn't mean that they were unanswered. Amen, anybody? All right, just because you have a prayer that is not answered the way that you thought doesn't mean that God didn't answer it, especially if you are His child or daughter. So as we were talking about this on March the 1st of this year at Chapel at Freed Hardeman, there was a song that we sang that I love and I hate. I love the song because it is a wonderful song about blessing, and I hate it because a part of that song that I don't like very much. But will you sing it with me? Okay. Blessed be your name in a land that is plentiful, where your streams of abundance flow. Blessed be your name. Blessed be your name when I'm found in the desert place. Though I walk through the wilderness, blessed be your name. Every blessing you pour out, I turn back to praise. When the darkness closes in, Lord, still I will say, blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your glorious name. Blessed be your name when the sun's shining down on me, when the world's all as it should be. Blessed be your name. Blessed be your name on a road marked with suffering, though there's pain in the offering. Blessed be your name. Every blessing you pour out, I turn back to praise. When the darkness closes in, Lord, still I will say, blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your glorious name. You give and take away. You give and take away. My heart will choose to say, Lord, blessed be your name. You give and take away. You give and take away. My heart will choose to say, Lord, blessed be your name. You give and take away. You give and take away. My heart will choose to say, Lord, blessed be your name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be the name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your glorious name. Jamie, how are you doing so far? All right, I like Jamie as an interpreter. She tells me that I talk too fast, and I tell her to mind her own business. Okay, so you just keep up, girl. You are a good interpreter. You're really good. All right, so here's the deal about blessed be your name. It's easy to say blessed be your name when there's a chicken in every pot and a car in every garage. Some of you older people know about that. All right, it's easy to do that when everything's going well. But now that things are not going so well, then I wonder how easy is it to say, blessed be your name. Now, Chris Winford talked some about this on Sunday night, and he stole some thunder, but the Lord has plenty of thunder left. And so let's talk then about this as we talk about answered prayers and unanswered prayers, etc. Now, the problem with Job is that I envision that it's like somewhat of a dramatic poem, although I do think Job was a historical character, but it is written in the poetic section of your Bible. All right, and so Job is in front of the curtain, and he is reacting to all that he knows. But what he doesn't know is that God and Satan have had a dialogue. And that the reason why he's going through this is not because he's a bad person. It's actually because he's a righteous man. That's going to be your problem. Because there's nobody sometimes to pull the curtain back. There's nobody sometimes to say, this is happening to you because you are a good person. This is happening to you because you're suffering for the sake of the Lord. There's nobody to pull the screen back and look. The reason why we know it with Job is because it's in the book. But he didn't know, and that's the problem that you and I will have. We don't know either. So, Job was afflicted with his body's covered from the top of his head to the bottom of his feet with boils. He's scraping the ooze from the boils with pieces of broken pottery. And by the way, his friends are not necessarily ugly to him because they sit with him for 7 days without saying anything bad to him at all. Until they start the discussion, and the discussion is just like this, same song, second verse. That is, you did something wrong. If you hadn't done something wrong to God, He wouldn't be doing this to you. I dare you as a Christian not to think this thought sometime, because sometimes you're likely to think this thought. And that is, this is happening to me because of something that I have done. And so, God has promised to answer the prayers of His children. I don't need to go over these passages with you. Ask and it shall be given you. Seek and you shall find. Knock and the door shall be opened unto you. Matthew 7, 7 through 11. Philippians 4, 6 and 7. You know, with every supplication, let your prayer things even known to God. And then you got James 5. If you ask according to God's will, He will hear you. And then 2 Kings 21 through 7, Hezekiah asked for 15 more years in his life, and he got it. And then there's 1 John chapter 5, verses 14 and 15, which also talks about the power of prayer and asking God and receiving it. Because the prayer of a righteous man, James 5, avails much. As we think about that, we know that stuff. I mean, that's in the book, but how do you deal with it personally when it comes in your own life? Now, I don't remember, Doug. I do remember reading an article that you did about this shortly after. Dr. Doug Burleson over here is a good friend. Fred Hardman, I love him. Okay, and so I don't really remember if I did all 5 of these or if you did 5 and I did 4, but it's the same point. Okay, so here you go. You ready? Yeah. Number 1, thank you, Pete. Number 1, Moses didn't always get what he wanted. He asked to go into the land of Canaan, and he did not get to go. God said no. David wanted to build the house of God, but God again said no. You are a man of blood. David's child dies. This is the child by Bathsheba. And after the child dies, he takes off the sackcloth and ashes. He washes the ashes from his face and his arms, and he puts on his kingly attire and goes about his business. And so they ask him, well, you were in mourning, while the child was sick, and now that the child has died, why is it that you're cleaning up? You're getting a shower. Why are you doing that? And David gave us that famous line, look, my son cannot come back to me, but I can go to my son. But nonetheless, he didn't get what he wanted. Elijah didn't get what he wanted either, because he said, oh Lord, take away my life, for I am no better than my fathers. Did he get it on that occasion? And the answer is no, he did not get it. The Apostle Paul in 2 Corinthians chapter 12 asked for his affliction, whatever it was, to be taken away from him. It's conjecture as to what it was. Maybe because of the metaphor that's involved there, he had poor eyesight. Nobody knows for sure. But he asked the Lord 3 times, and he thought that was enough. I've asked the Lord 3 times to take this away from me, and he said, no, no, no. And then Jesus himself, in the days of his flesh, Jesus offered up prayers and supplications with loud cries and tears to him who was able to save him from death. And he was heard because of his reverence. Remember in Luke 22 verse 42, God, if you be willing, I don't want to die like this. And yet he still did. He still died like that. Now, what do you do with these passages? Well, in my own life, I felt kind of exempt from this because I kind of felt a little like Job until 1992. because we hadn't had any big deaths in the family or anything, but I had one sister, and her name was Shirley. And she was 54 years old. She got cancer, symptoms of what turned out to be cancer, although it started out with something that was pretty benign. But then she died 33 days later with one of the fastest advancing type of renal cell carcinoma, John, that she could possibly have. 33 days. The last days we're standing by her bedside, seated by her bedside. She was a good alto. We were singing songs that she would like to sing, like Paradise Valley and No Tears in Heaven and things like that, when she was in a coma and could not recover. And she died anyway. I had no brothers. I had one sister. And then she's gone. That was the first time in my life that I experienced the fact that I'm preaching to these people, and I myself am really a pretty sorry rascal. Why is that? Because I no longer feel like officially praying. Do not ask me to lead a prayer. I don't want to do it. And I felt that way in 92. And then next year, that began 7 years of our oldest daughter's 7 years on drugs and alcohol, which had a lot to do with my sister's death. Wow. The hardest 3 steps in my life was preaching at Campbell Street, because there was 3 steps to get up into the pulpit. I felt like such a hypocrite. I felt like such a loser, such a failure. Because not only had I lost my sister, but our daughter is in prison for 2 years and 77 days in another state. And you say to yourself, well, you adopted her when she was 5 weeks old. Why did this happen? A lot of it was connected to the fact that my daughter resented God taking her favorite aunt away from her during her senior year in high school. That didn't come out till some later, because they were connected. But I didn't get what I prayed for. Although this was kind of odd. My sister hung on for a while there. And I was going to go demand that somebody give her some more morphine. I knew they had maxed her out, but I wanted her to have some more morphine. And while I was gone to the nurse's station, my sister chose that way to pass into the next world. I resent that. Yeah. Still hard. After all these years, still hard. And then the stuff that recently has happened. Our favorite elder, maybe we're not supposed to have favorite elders at Campbell Street in Jackson, but he's just been so good to us. Well, he just went for a colonoscopy, and it was stage 4 renal cell, it was stage 4 colorectal cancer, and he just dies. Everybody praying for him, and he just dies. And then Dr. Stan Mitchell. He fell on campus, crossing the street. He was supposed to speak in chapel that day. And 62 years old, not really overweight. I don't know why, but he always kept his British accent, because he grew up on the mission field in Zimbabwe. When most of his family got rid of his accent, he didn't, because Stan would talk about going to class. And I'd say, Stan, we don't have classes here in the United States. We have classes. We do not have class, But he would talk about that. And students just loved him. And so when he fell of the heart attack, most all the campus began to gather into small groups to pray for him. After chapel, you could see them spontaneously gathering together around the bell tower, just praying for Stan, and just praying and praying and praying. And God allowed him into the next world anyway. And then recently, this is the one that's freshest, the one that I really don't want to talk about. Jeff Jenkins was supposed to come here to speak this year. And he told Carrie that his wife was in such a precarious situation that he could not come this year. So, on June the 20th, although it was thought by the Mayo Clinic that she might have a couple months left, she just peacefully dies about 10 minutes till 7 on June the 20th. I had made plane reservations before that to fly to Albuquerque and then to fly to Red River to speak. And then we would fly separately, so where they were having the preacher training thing at Louisville, Texas, where Jeff preaches. And Joyce and her best friend Laura would have some time together, some extra time together. And also plan this trip, the timing on this trip, so we could maximize the time that those girls could spend together, because they could almost like read each other's mind. Both preachers' wives. Instead, last week, Jeff is getting together Laura's things from the house. They'd been married for 38 years. Getting together Laura's things from the house and selling them this past weekend as Joyce and I are there, and the emotions were so raw and tangible that it really was kind of a relief to fly to Lake Tahoe. And the reason why it was a relief is that coming here, although Jeff is my best friend, coming here at least you get away from the selling of her things and all of that stuff that goes with it. Although thousands and thousands of prayers had gone up for all of these saints, and they died anyway. So in the Hebrews class, after Stan's death, I don't know if you can see this or not, I wanted them, sorry Pete, I wanted them to look at some possible answers to prayer from God. We looked at some of the same passages that we talked about here. And then I had them to say, well, what if God says yes? What are some possibilities? And what if God says no? What are some possibilities? And so here's the chart that they came up with in my Hebrews class. Because a yes might be exactly what you asked for. And it might be a modified yes. And it might be a yes, but not right now. And a no could be an absolute no, as in the case of the child of David and Bathsheba living, or Paul praying that his thorn in the flesh would be taken away, or Jesus praying not to die. And there would be an absolute no to that. Maybe sometimes we get a no because our motives are wrong. We're not asking with the right motives because our motives are a little selfish. Sometimes we're asking because of sin in our own life, and we're wanting to hang on to somebody else because it's like they're our anchor point, like there are anchor points in this tent, and we want to hold on to somebody because they are our strength. They are our anchor point. They are our stakes driven in the ground to hold us up. And if they die, then what's going to happen to me? Well, so here's what Ralph has concluded. I'm not good at this. And that is trusting in a loving God. I am really not good at this. You remember when your kids were little and you'd set them up on the table and you'd say, jump. And they just jump, as though they trusted you. Until you let them fall, and then that's not a good thing. Okay, but they just jump. And then if you have stairs in their house, they're going to go up one more stair to see if they can jump from the third step and the fourth step. Now this doesn't work when they're 16 years old. Okay, but nonetheless, when they're little, they'll just jump into your arms because they trust you. They trust you. Well, then why is it hard for me? Well, I think this is one of the things. Men like to fix it, and women feel it, although women are extremely intelligent. I got 4 daughters. My wife sitting right over there is extremely intelligent. I know that women are intelligent, but I know that men like to fix stuff. All right, and so it's like when your child brings a bottle to you that they cannot open. Dad, can you open this? And the answer is yes, or I will break my wrist. Because I will open this. Dad, can you fix this toy? Well, the answer is yes, I can fix that toy, but I might have to wait till you go to sleep and go to Walmart and buy another one. But I can fix that toy. Because men fix it. That's what you do. What good are you except for ESPN and fixing stuff? I mean, you're not good for anything else. But you can't fix this. And so a couple of passages come to mind that I'll try to briefly share with you, Carrie. I'm sorry if you tell me when I need to quit. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean into your own understanding. Carrie, I'm not brilliant, but Dr. Thomas B. Warren was. He was the best apologist of his generation. So many of us learned the Christian evidences and apologetics because of him. He was the first guy in the Churches of Christ to actually debate a high-level atheist like Anthony Flew, or someone of that category. He was brilliant. And yet his favorite passage in class, Brother Clark, was Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. If you got a brain that's like Megamind, I mean, if you got a brain like him, hello, would you come in and would you bring your brain too, please? I say, if you have a brain that's that big, why would you say, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not into your own understanding, when all of your life is trying to get understanding? You won't understanding. Why is it this way? So, Psalm 46, we're going to summarize quickly. Be still and know. All right, I'm not good on these roads here in Lake Tahoe. Why? I'm impatient. I don't like getting in a line. When my daughter said, Dad, you're not going to go to hell when you die, but if you do, Satan's going to put you in a line that never moves. Okay? Did she say that, Joyce? Yeah, she did. One time, I was so impatient. You know, sometimes it was a funeral procession, and that's back in the days when you're following the hearse. We're doing 30 miles an hour, and I'm thinking, we can beat this. And I pulled out to pass the hearse, you know. And so I whipped it back in a hurry, because 30 miles an hour is not the speed that I want to go. I am impatient. I don't want God to say no to me as an answer. I don't want that. Why? Because I want what I want. Be still and know, which means, will you stop fighting? Man, you know what that means? When you figured it out, all that you can figure it out, can you trust God now? Women, when you've thought about this, endless hours in the middle of the night, trying to figure out exactly how all this is going to work out, can you stop and say, God, I'm going to quit this struggling. I'm going to be still. And I want to see your power. So, 3 things we learn from Psalm 46. Number 1, God is saying to Hezekiah, by the way, Hezekiah can't figure out how, with all the army of Sennacherib, he can't figure out how that their army is going to take over them. But he nonetheless has his commanders to go to each of the group that they're over and say to them, be strong and courageous, and do not be afraid. Be strong and courageous. Did Hezekiah know how that was going to work out? No, I don't think so. You know what happened? The angel of the Lord came and smote 185,000 Assyrians. And Hezekiah could not possibly have seen that happening. So Hezekiah runs back, to the Chaldean area, because God has said, no, you cannot have it. So be still, stop fighting, and know that God is your refuge. In times when it seems as though every other refuge seems to want to move, You want to be here at this refuge, then you find out, well, that's just floating too. And you put your refuge in a person, and the person disappoints you. You put your refuge maybe in an elder, and he may not be the best elder in the world, and you put your refuge in the wrong spot. Put your refuge in God. Amen. He is personal, He is powerful, and He is permanent. Therefore, and secondly, know Him not only as your refuge, but as your river. I don't have time to develop this, but Hezekiah figured out that somebody can overtake Jerusalem if they just divert our water supply. So he thought it would be a good idea and a wonderful feat of engineering if they just start from the Gihon Spring on one side and the Pool of Siloam on the other side, and they start building a tunnel. And then after the tunnel is completed, covering the old entrance to the spring where nobody can take over Jerusalem by taking away their water supply. 777 feet long. That's what Hezekiah was able to do. I cannot prove that this is what the psalmist had in mind when he talks about the river. Maybe so. But I know this. Jesus is the river in your life. I used to fly before I discovered I got my pilot's license, and then it occurred to me, I'm still teaching at Freed-Hardeman. Okay, and so flying is not a good hobby at Freed-Hardeman unless you got a plane this big. Okay, and so I stopped flying, but when I was flying, one of my things, Keith, that I like to do is fly along a river. And just notice how many people settle where there's that source of the river. And Jesus is your river, by the way. He offered the Samaritan woman water that she could never get rid of. And finally, God is your ruler. Look at the call to behold who God is. As a ruler, notice what is said. Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. A song that goes along with this. And since you didn't know the last song, I'm not real sure that you're going to know this one. But I hope that you do. Hide me now under your wings. Cover me within your mighty hand. When the oceans rise and thunders roar, I will soar with you above the storm. Father, you are king over the flood. I will be still and know you are God. So, it might have been Brother Doug who first used this expression locally about Stan when he said that our worst day, when Stan died, was his best day. The day that my sister died, she was a faithful Christian. Our worst day was her best. When Kenny died, our worst day was his best. And now when Laura has died, although we do not want to accept this, she's in a better place because God answered the prayer by saying, I've got something better for you. Something better. So as we were in Reno Sunday morning, wonderful brethren there at North Virginia Street, and we were taking the Lord's Supper together, and being silent and thinking about this, I was thinking, I can't confirm this by the Bible exactly, but I wonder if we're going to partake in the Lord's table with Him someday again. Then it occurred to me that when Laura died, that He's got a brand new wonderful person at His table. Another thing that Joyce said is this. Man, she would wear me out with the questions. Thinking that because I did open forum at Freed Hardeman that I like to go around answering people's questions. And she would just, question after question after question after question. And sometimes I couldn't answer them all. But Joyce said about her, Laura, your questions have been answered. Now, where in the world are you tonight? Some of you have been dragging guilt around as though it weighs 300 pounds with a 100-pound chain. And you cannot trust in God. You just want to say, somehow or another, I'm going to fix this. With a load of guilt, it's hard to sing at church. With a load of guilt, it's really hard to pray. And it's really hard to do other things in church because it seems to interfere with everything else because you got this big old load of guilt. Can you learn to trust? Can you trust Him tonight? Through faith, repentance, confession, and baptism. But most of you are Christians tonight, and if you're not, we want you to become one. But one of the hardest things that you're going to have is to try to figure out, how am I supposed to handle this when God gave me an answer that I did not want? And God, I'm holding that against you. God, I want you to know I'm holding that against you. Can you stop that tonight? Can you pray for God's forgiveness? That you can actually trust in God again, the ruler of this world. While we stand and sing.